Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Kari and today I am doing my August TBR. I have been doing themed months since May. May was my first one and I themed it around Abby from Abby of Pelennor, who is always linked down below, so go check her out, she's amazing. And books that she has gifted me, recommended, made me think of her, etc. June was Military History Month, inspired by my boss who has a whole bunch of military history books, and I have been slowly working my way through basically his entire office library. It's a work in progress, but I'm getting there. And then July ended up being completely random, entirely because one of the books that I borrowed from my boss was 700 pages about Nuremberg and the Nuremberg trials. So it took me over half the month to get through that alone. And from there, I really didn't know what I wanted to read, so I just picked up random books. However, now it's August, and my original plan for July had been to do a reread month, and then Nuremberg. So I am simply moving that into August, and August is going to be my reread month. I have been wanting to reread a whole slew of books on my shelves. I own about 1,800 books, of which I have read about 1,100. I am happy with that number, entirely because it is more than half, which is more than I thought I had read. So I'll take it. However, it does mean that there are a lot of books that I absolutely adore that I don't necessarily get to reread all that often because I'm trying to get through everything else on my shelves on top of library books or boss borrow books. Try saying that 5 times fast. You name it. So I have all but one, which is part of a series, and some of them are very extensive series. I will get to those in a minute, but basically it's just books that I looked around and went, I know I want to reread that because I've been wanting to reread it for months, if not years. But we are going to start with the most obvious one, which take your guesses in the comments below, and if you've been here for a little bit, you're going to know exactly what series this is. You're correct, it's Graceling. This is one of my 5 sets of this series because I adore it. It is my absolute favorite, hands down, no questions. This is about Katza, who is a girl graced with killing. Grace means you just have a special ability, you have 2 different color eyes. At the start of this book, Graceling, which is the first published, technically the sequel to Fire, but you can read them in any order you want. You can read them in any order you want. Anyway, in this one, she's graced with killing, she's become her uncle's assassin, and decides she's gonna go rescue this prisoner of another king. Meets somebody there, and adventures and shenanigans ensue. Love, love, love these books, and the fifth one is coming out in November, Sea Sparrow. I am beyond excited. It does mean I need to get the paperback of both the British and the American version of Winterkeep to continue completing my series, so that when Sea Sparrow comes in, I have more. But Sea Sparrow comes out in November, and on top of that, I'm just always down for a reread of Graceling. Another series, but this one's only a trilogy, is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. This is a historical fiction, science fiction, classic retelling series that follows initially Mary Jekyll, who is the daughter of Dr. Jekyll, in case you couldn't tell. And she meets, let's see, who does she meet in this one? Diana Hyde. She gets help from Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, finds Beatrice Rappaccini, Catherine Moreau, and Justine Frankenstein. So basically, you take all the classics we know and love, they all had daughters in various ways, and they meet up and solve mysteries, specifically this one overarching mystery in this trilogy. I adore this. It is fantastic. It does help if you've read the classics beforehand, so Frankenstein, Dracula, Jekyll and Hyde, etc. However, you don't have to have read any of them. If you know the basic premise, Dracula, vampire, Frankenstein, dislikes fire, Jekyll and Hyde, nice person, bad person, you're good to go. Adore this, and it's been a couple years since I reread it, So that needs to happen. Only nonfiction that I deliberately thought about, and therefore the only one on this list, is The Sultan and the Queen by Jerry Broughton. This one is on my list because I've been reading, and I always want to learn more about Elizabeth and her time period because I'm obsessed. I read this book, I don't know when, not a decade ago, but more than 5 years ago, somewhere in that range. And I loved it, but I want to remember more of it, especially having read several other books about Islam and Islamic culture and how that kind of interwove with colonialism and imperialism and everything that followed. Since the 1500s were the start of all of that nonsense. I do remember enjoying this book. It's fairly short, 300 pages-ish. So I would like to reread it and kind of go at it with newer eyes. Another trilogy is the Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a fantasy reimagining, sort of World War II from the point of view of China, basically, which Rin is the main character. But maybe inspired would be a better term. Anyway, Rin, low peasant girl, decides she wants to not be that anymore, gets into a prestigious military school, and shit hits the fan, let me tell you. This is an amazing trilogy. It is brutal, it is dark, it is gory, it is hard, and it will make you scream at multiple points. However, it is phenomenal. It is beautifully well written. It is chunky, so you definitely need some time to sink your teeth into this. And it is the epitome of the right ending, but not a happy ending, if that makes sense. So I love this, and I've only read it once, so I really want to read it again. Okay, the rest are not serious. Well, the rest after this one are, but I also want to reread Daughter of the Deep because it's based on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, and I fucking love Jules Verne's. I mean, I've only read the one so far, but it's on the list. And this was so good, so I want to reread 20,000 Leagues so I can reread this one. This list just keeps expanding, but that's kind of the point of the themes, is that I can do that. So this one too. Next up, we have Cry of the Icemark by Stuart Hill. This is also a trilogy. There is a prequel out there about Thurin's father, but I have not read that yet. At any rate, Thurin Freer, strong in the arm, Linden Shield. It's a mouthful of a name. She is 13 at the beginning of this book, and she and her father are fighting the very scientific Southern Kingdom, which has a name, but I don't remember what it is, it doesn't matter. They fight this very scientific Southern Kingdom because she and her Northern people are not that scientific. It's fun. I adore this series. I think it is amazing, and just, it's made me go back to it many, many times before. For that matter, the spine is all damaged because it used to be my sister's book and I read it so much, she gave it to me. Whoops. But love this series, and I haven't read it in a while, so it needs to happen. Next up, we have, I mean, technically not By the Sword, but also I would be fine reading By the Sword by Mercedes Lackey, because I didn't want to go way back there in that corner to get the next book in the Griffin trilogy, which is the start of her Valdemar series. I read Black Griffin when I annotated it for my cousin Lon for Christmas of 2020, and then haven't gone back to the series because there's a lot of internal and external pressure to read new books and not to reread a lot, at least for me. So I am going to, at the very least, finish the Griffin trilogy, which is Black Griffin, Silver Griffin, White Griffin. Not necessarily in that order, but those three books. At some point I would like to read every Mercedes Lackey book I own and that she comes out with in future. But at the moment we're going to focus on that trilogy because that's a lot less overwhelming. I have the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I've sort of been in the middle of rereading this for a year and a half now. I've read, what's the first one? The Assassin's Accomplice? Assassin's Blade. I've read The Assassin's Blade again sometime last year, but I want to read it in these cute little copies that I got like 4 years ago now, because they have various characters' names highlighted in the color of the book cover. So this is on my list. It won't take me that long, I just need to actually sit down and, read them. Oh, by the way, traitor to the throne gets another chance to be the king's assassin, and it blows up from there. Next, we have another representation of me not wanting to go into the little corners of my books, because this is not the first book in this series. This is the Mandy series by Lois Gladys Leopard. It is Christian fiction, but it's very, very short, and for me it's more the sentimentality of it. This series is 41 books, so I will not be reading all 41 this month because that would be ludicrous. Also, I have other things to do on my weekends, like a Renfest. So, first one is Mandy and the Secret Tunnel. Yeah. Mandy is a 11-year-old kid at the beginning of this series at the turn of the 20th century, so 1899, 1900-ish. She is 1/4 Cherokee on her dad's side. Don't mind River, I'm quite sure there's just a truck. And her dad dies at the start of the first book. And so she has to go and, figure out how to live because her mom is already not in the picture. I adore this series. My grandma bought me all of the books, which, again, sentimentality, right? But also, I just think they're fun. They're mystery stories. They're age-appropriate, which, I mean, I am not 10, but I like them. And I haven't reread this series in eons, so it definitely needs to be on my list. We have the Royal Diaries series. Specifically, I want to reread the Johanna one. I want to read all of the ones that I have. I've got Marie Antoinette, Cleopatra, Elizabeth, and Lady of Chiao Kuo. I'm very sorry. I didn't realize I was going to say that. Anyway, I loved specifically the Elizabeth and Johanna ones when I was young. This book in particular is actually the reason I am so fascinated by Johanna. She was alive about 100 years after Elizabeth, obviously a whole different continent, but the diaries to me both resonated and they had a similar vibe. So I loved it and I would like to reread these. Johanna, by the way, if you don't know, is the daughter of the man who built the Taj Mahal for her mother. Then we have, specifically again, I do want to read Hang a Thousand Trees with Ribbons by Anne Rinaldi. This is a historical fiction about Phyllis Wheatley, who was the first Black woman to have poetry published in the States. Or one of the first. She's important. She was a slave. She got her poetry published. I mean, it wasn't a great life. I'm pretty sure, lived in poverty after that. Wasn't great. But this is the story of her childhood, basically. So from when she gets kidnapped and enslaved, and how she begins writing poetry, and the people who own her, and what they did to, I guess, help her. I mean, they did help, but also they owned her. Anyway, I love Anne Rinaldi's writing. I think it's fantastic, it's easy, and she is, I think, pretty much the only historical fiction writer I read when I was, or at least the main one, when I was 13. I did a book report on one of them. Which one was that one? I don't know. Oh yes, I do. Taking Liberty, which is how I got interested in Oni Judge, who was Washington's enslaved person who ran away to Canada and never came back. He spent a lot of money trying to find her. It didn't go well. I mean, he found her, but she just straight up went, nah, I'm good, thanks dude. And then he died, so it was great. But anyway, basically anything by Anne Rinaldi I will read, but I have been thinking more about Phyllis Wheatley lately for some reason. Couldn't tell you why, so I want to reread it. And then the last one is Home on Stoney Creek by Wanda Luttrell. This is a quintet. There's 5 books. So I want to read this one, again with the Christian fiction, but I also really enjoyed this one. It is a 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl in the late 1760s, early 1770s, as the American colonies are revving up for, revolting. Because, as you do. She and her family moved to Kentucky, which is at the time a wilderness, and you could end up dead at any given point. I really enjoyed these books as a kid. I don't know if these are going to resonate quite as much with me as an adult. There's definitely more of the religion. Pardon the dogs. barking at another dog. Hey! Alright. Now Melody's staring at me woefully from the other side of my door. This one is heavier on the religious aspect than the Mandy series is. The Mandy series is more believe in God. Occasionally we pray this one certain verse when we're scared, she and her friends. This one, it's very clearly, like, that is the, oh geez, main purpose of this. So I'm going to talk fast because now they're barking at people who are walking and I don't want them to get scared because they've already scared the mailman. Really good book. Want to see if it resonates with them as much now as it did then, but I did enjoy it, so we're going to see. Those are the books, or at least some of the books that I can read in August. We're going to see what else I want to reread, and right now I have to go take care of the dog, so I will see you in my next video. Bye!